Hey, what is up, people of the internet? Welcome to another episode of Movies Good, Internet Bad, a celebration of the cinema uploaded right here to the internet, the place that hates it the most. I'm Cory, that's Shane, and next week's the finale of The Acolyte. So we're going to talk about pretty much the entire series leading up to this penultimate episode that we got this week. The good, the bad, the ugly, the bloodbath, the seduction, the horniness, and all of it. Shane, how are you, sir?
Good. We're talking about Star Wars again for some reason. I don't know why we keep doing this, but it is. Yeah, I don't know. It's set the internet on fire, so we might as well, right?
Yeah, I feel like we're like two old dudes at like an Elks Lodge or something that are reminiscing about their days in the war, but it's just us talking about Star Wars television
Yeah.
shows. So the last video that we made, which if you haven't seen, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell so you never miss a new one. Go ahead and like this one while you're at it. Helps out the algorithm, pushes us out to other people. The last video we made was right after episode 3 aired. So since then, we've had episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. Some things happened that were good. Some things happened that were not so good. And we're ramping up to the all-important finale episode, which is really the key when it comes to a season of television. So, Shane, it has been a journey.
It has.
What has worked for you since we last spoke about the Acolyte, and what has not worked for you?
Yeah. I think it's almost poetic that the one of the main themes of this show is doing something with the best intentions but not getting the right results. That's kind of what the theme of the
It's good.
Jedi in this show is.
I almost spit my drink up. That's
That is,
that's really good.
I feel like that is also just a thesis statement for the show as a whole.
Sure.
I think the ideas that this show is bringing forth are interesting and new and trying to take Star Wars in different directions. I have read the interviews with Leslie Headland throughout the various weeks, and she seems like a pretty big Star Wars fan and has a lot of good ideas, and she seems pretty smart. But the show that they're trying to make and the show they're making are two different shows.
Interesting.
I
Tell me
don't
more.
I don't feel like the execution is very strong in most of these concepts. Episode 7, which just aired, is like the biggest example of this, right? Because you've set up to this big moment where you show that the Jedi are really trying to do the right thing, but they mess up. But like it's told in such a weird way, and like in the big moment. Spoiler alert! If you've not somehow not seen the episode by now and you're watching an Acolyte review, but like the moment where the witch turns into the black smoke monster from Lost, and then Soul is like, "No, I'm gonna stab you now." It was just done so clunky, and like when she started turning into the smoke, I actually laughed a little bit because it looked weird. I'm like, I should not be laughing during the biggest like pivotal reveal in the show, right? Like I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
That's just kind of a theme throughout, right? The idea of the enemies to lovers trope, I think, is interesting on its face, but
Absolutely.
like it's done in 30 minutes, and like it didn't feel earned enough. It felt like OSHA just went from like I'm great to maybe I should put on the Sith mask,
Right.
and like okay, that was fast. Yeah, and so it's just a constant battle between the ideas and concepts and pretty shoddy writing.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be nice first, and then I'll get into the not as nice as we tend to do on this
Yeah,
show. Uh, Episode 5 was fantastic. They came out swinging. They said we're going to do everything in our power to up the Phantom Menace lightsaber duel. I thought they had some wonderfully choreographed action.
yeah,
I thought that Manny Jacinto is fantastic.
he's the best part of the show for
His role
sure.
easily the best part of the show for me, and not just because he's a Sith, but because he's playing a dual role very similarly to how the Osha May characters are a dual role, and he's just knocking it out of the park.
Yeah,
If you would have ever told me the guy
the
from The
good
Good
place.
Place
Yeah,
could be doing stuff like this, I wouldn't. I believe it, but it would take me a little while to get there.
yeah,
Because it came so out of left field for me, but it worked so well. and I thought all of that was great. I thought there was a lot of really strong stuff in the episode after that as well. You know, where Soul he stuns May on the ship, and he's like, I've had 16 years to think about what I'm gonna say.
Yep.
And now you're gonna listen. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. And then it was just like a weirdly done Rashomon of episode 3.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh, you thought you knew what was happening here, but look, Soul's in the corner, or Soul's in the rafters, or Soul's in the ground. Like, it was just this kind of weird, hokey thing. And I thought that you and I talked about this, and this happens a lot when we're talking about Star Wars shows, even long before we started doing this show. We have a tendency to say, well, surely they won't do this. And then I feel like whenever we say that, it's like a recipe for that exact thing to happen.
Yeah, we said it on a prior episode.
We said there's no way that they're going to dedicate the entire penultimate episode of the show to a flashback. They're going to get in, they're going to get out, they're going to tell you exactly what happened in 15 or 20 minutes. They're going to cut back to the present time with your main characters and advance that story to tee up the finale. Psych.
Yeah.
Didn't happen at all. They spent 45 minutes on flashback, and a lot of that stuff in the flashback was recycled footage from episode 3.
Yep.
Yes, there were new angles, but a lot of it was the exact same stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to use a comparison here. You've seen the best Harry Potter movie of all of them, which is The Prisoner of Azkaban, where they go through the events and then they do a flashback and they go through the events again from a different perspective. But when they do the flashback, it is much faster than the first time.
Right.
It's not the same length of time. Because we've seen most of this. We know what happens here.
Actually, I'm going to open up Disney Plus on my phone now and see, because I think this one might have actually even been longer.
It could be.
Than the first one. So let's
but
see.
Yeah, I feel like it didn't use the runtime effectively enough because we didn't learn enough new things. There's another comparison I'll make, which is there's this episode of Lost called The Other 48 Days, where in season 2 you learn that half of the plane actually landed on the other side of the island, and they have been having their own story, and they intersect with the front half of the plane. And that episode tells the entire, basically, season 1 story in one episode. So it compresses the time, right?
And you Lost learn was 20 episodes a season or something?
Oh, yeah.
So
it compresses the time in different characters, and you learn a whole lot of new things, so that then when you get back into the present, you can piece everything together, right?
Sure.
This felt like a momentum killer.
Yeah. So episode 3 is 44 minutes. Episode 7 was 43 minutes. So it was 1 minute less. It just, I don't know. And not even so much, like, yes, it is a momentum killer. And I don't like the fact that it did that. But the part that I'm more nervous about now is that you have to wrap up the entire season in what will probably be like a 40 or 45 minute long finale.
Yeah.
There's too much going on right now. How do you resolve it? Unless you're planning on doing a second season? There's so many. You should
not write a season 1 planning on season 2 unless you know you're getting a season 2.
Right.
Which maybe they do. I kind of doubt it based off of the reaction, but maybe. I don't know. I don't know what Disney's viewership numbers look like. There had been rumors that maybe the viewership is actually quite good.
Yeah.
But I don't know how founded those are. It would kind of make sense, right? Because like controversy sells, and people see people, hating it online. Oh, I should actually check this out.
While we're on the subject of controversy, there isn't really anything in this show that's all that controversial.
No.
Can we just buck that real fast? Like, that's not a thing that's actually happening. Yeah, it's a very by the numbers Star Wars show with a lot of the same themes that all of Star Wars has had for the last 40 something years. It's not that radically different.
No, and what drives me crazy about this is you can acknowledge and criticize a show for what it's actually doing poorly. You don't have to make stuff up, right? Like the big tweets that I saw going on after this episode 7 were, see, Leslie Headland is making the Jedi bad. It's like, that's not the point of the show. That's not what she's doing at all. It's not doing a lot of things well, and you can acknowledge those, but you don't have to make things up to make it worse. Like it's bad enough on its own. I mean, I don't think it's horrible, but like
But it makes enough of its own mistakes to get in its own way.
exactly.
You don't have to make shit up out of thin air
Yeah,
to say that it's bad.
and it feels like every week we have a new like super controversial like Star Wars breaking. They tarnish the lore. It's like you can just talk about how the storytelling's not really working and the dialogue's not great and the direction is kind of weird and the pacing's weird and the editing where scenes just kind of end randomly in the middle of a scene. Can we talk about that?
I mean, sure, yeah, because it happened a lot in the sixth episode.
It happened a lot. I feel like in most of the episodes.
Well, yeah, but that was the one that really stuck out.
Yeah.
Oh, what is going on here? Why are we cross-cutting to this now? You know,
there's a weird. There's an art to getting in and out of a scene, and they're not good at that art. I don't know if it's the writing or the directing or maybe something in the edit, but they will be seemingly in the middle of a scene and just cut to a different scene. I'm like, oh, okay, we're just moving on here. Yep. Episode 5, that happened a lot where it was like there was the lightsaber fight, and then like Osha and Yord were running away, and it was like their middle of their conversation, and then no, we're back to the lightsaber fight. I'm like, okay, what was that scene for
like
then?
Whiplash, right?
Yeah. And the episodes end the same way too. They just kind of end. There's no big moment. There's no big like leading up to something. It just ends.
It's fascinating though, because we just recorded a video about House of the Dragon, and in that we talked about Succession also. Every single one of those episodes is designed so that way when it hits the credits, you start like scratching yourself because you can't wait that week until the next one comes out.
Yeah.
When you just drop the floor out from underneath somebody and hit the credits, that effect doesn't carry through.
Yeah, episode 7 was huge for that, right? Because episode 6 you had this, cliffhanger-ish moment where he's like, I'm going to finally talk to May about what happened. And then like that would be setting you up for a big, finale, reveal, whatever. But then you pause that and then you just tell a self-contained 45-minute flashback episode and have zero present day footage at all. And then next week we're just back into the finale. It's like, where's that ramp? Where's that momentum? If you look at how like Andor works, and I feel like Andor sets up its finale phenomenally, right? Everything in that back half of the season is momentum towards what's going to happen in the finale. This didn't do that. It doesn't feel like the next week should be the finale. It feels like just another episode.
Yep. And this is a symptom of a larger issue at the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah.
Whether it's Star Wars, we saw this with almost every season of The Mandalorian so far, where the real threat of the season is not established until the 6th or 7th episode of an 8-episode run. The Book of Boba Fett introduced its main villain in the penultimate episode and then killed him 1 episode later.
Yep.
Similar thing with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, like Vader's the villain, but you don't really get into the meaty stuff until all the way at the end.
Yep.
And they've had this problem over at Marvel too. The WandaVision finale was rushed. The Moon Knight finale was rushed. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier finale was rushed. I don't know what they're doing when it comes to structure and, just putting those building blocks together to do something like what an Andor does, where you said the back half of the season. I would argue that it's the entire season.
It's just a slow ramp up, and
it
then
is a
really
slow ramp, and then by the time you get to that Rick's Road episode, like, holy shit, man, we're off to the races, and you want to go fight the Empire.
Yeah.
By the time that episode's done, and that means that season has done its job.
Yeah.
It has shown you enough bad that the Empire does, and it has taken you on a ride to the point where you almost feel galvanized yourself.
Yeah.
By the end of it, with this Acolyte show, I'm enjoying it, and I sit down right at 9:00 every Tuesday to watch it. But at the end of the episodes, most of the time, I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
The only one that really shook me was that 5th episode, and I think it was because we haven't seen lightsaber combat like that since 2005.
Yeah, that's true.
The sequel trilogy has had a much more methodical, nuanced, storytelling-driven lightsaber whatever. And this was just like, he's just killing everyone, and holy shit, this is awesome. Yeah, like
Yeah.
people were really into it, and
Yeah.
and I don't blame them for it, because it's what a lot of fans have been asking for a very long time. It's also kind of hilarious that this thing they've been asking for forever is wedged right in the middle of a show that they all hate.
Yep.
It's just slightly ironic and makes me chuckle. But
Yeah.
I am very curious. I don't know how on earth they're going to wrap up everything in one episode next week. My gut is saying they're not going to.
Yeah.
There's going to be some hanging threads, or there's going to be some, half-assed explanations, or, things that aren't going to have moments to breathe like they should, which, how did we not learn from The Rise of Skywalker that character moments need to breathe? Love of God, guys, it's right there.
Yeah.
You made it. It's right there.
That's the thing that, really detracts from the show in general, is like, the whole point of this was this, Osha starts as the good guy and ends as the bad guy. I don't feel like she's been on that journey. She was a good guy for most of the time and had one episode, and I guess maybe now she's a bad guy or something. I don't know exactly how they'll approach it in the finale.
I mean, those biceps have a strong gravitational pull to them.
Yeah, that is one thing that I disliked about the show. It made me realize I need to be doing more arm day.
Yeah, shocking.
Incorporate more arm day into my workout routine.
The bozo from The Good Place.
Darth Arms.
Is your motivation for your arm workouts. It's pretty fascinating. But, overall, I'll leave it with this, and I'll let you close things out for us. The show as a whole, I thought, has been fine. There have been good moments.
Mm-hmm.
There have been not so good moments. There are some themes and ideas and concepts that you hear things and you go, ooh, wow, okay, Star Wars, you're trying something. It's not just, let me smash my action figures together for 45 minutes and hope for the best. Has it been a little bit disjointed and a little bit clunky? Yeah, it has. And I don't really think there's any way around that. There are a lot of people that love it, and that's awesome. I'm excited for them that they love it. There are a lot of great homages in these episodes to the High Republic books that a lot of people love. That's super cool too. I like when those are weaved into a story in a way that it doesn't like kind of hit you over the head with it. But if you have read those books, it adds an extra layer. I think we did a very good job with all that. Lightsaber stuff has been good. I actually like the music quite a bit. I thought Michael Abels did a pretty solid job. If you haven't checked out his work, he did the score for Nope, Jordan Peele's movie, which is very good. But it all hinges on, will the finale stick the landing? Because even if it's a bad season of television, if it has a killer finale and it leaves a good taste in your mouth at the end, a lot of those sins can be very quickly and easily forgotten. So
yeah, I agree with you completely. There are so many shows that are made by their finales.
Yep.
And even if they weren't quite working up till the finale, but they really hit in the finale, everyone, remembers that. And so I think that there is a chance that, like you said in the House of the Dragon review, a lot of these shows work backwards, right? I would imagine that the impetus for this show was actually whatever we're going to get in this finale. Leslie Headland has this one idea in mind of where she's going to, but getting there has been a bit of a struggle. And so I think it's going to be some sort of setup for Sith, Plagueis, something in that regard, especially because of the way that she's been kind of talking coy about the finale and Sith.
So you think we're going to see another one or two Sith Lords?
Yeah, probably. I think this is mainly meant to be sort of a setup for the Phantom Menace than it is a setup for a season 2, but I could be wrong.
A little sneaky backdoor pilot to the demise of the Jedi.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, right? That makes sense as something you could pitch as a show, right? Rather than kind of spinning your wheels in the High Republic era. So I think that that's probably where we're going with it. I wonder did we get enough substance to earn that? And I would say probably not. But again, maybe there is, a creative way of putting this all together that we're not thinking of. I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I like to say that, if we were smarter than the Star Wars writers, we'd be writing Star Wars.
We're certainly not.
So
we're the idiots on YouTube.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have to remember that a lot of these people are not inexperienced and have never made shows before or anything like that. So there is talent there, but whether it all comes together, like when you make something, it's kind of a miracle putting it all together in general.
Yep.
And so, I have, though I was just talking to somebody the other day who's a big Star Wars fan, and they hadn't watched the show. And the way I described it to them was like, I am interested in it, but I don't love it. Okay. And that's probably the way I would describe this show in general, is that I think it's doing a lot of good things, and I want to know what happens, which is more than I can say about some of the other Star Wars shows that I've watched over the years.
Yep.
But I don't think it's quality. Whereas like Andor was very high quality.
Yeah. My brain goes to season 3 of The Mandalorian, where it was like, we are just watching this to go through the motions and say we watched it because you're supposed to, and it doesn't, like, none of this matters.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And now it's getting a feature-length movie of all things.
It's how I felt about Ahsoka as well, where every time I watched that show, it's just like, I don't care about any of this. It is just, I'm only watching this out of an obligation to watching Star Wars as a franchise. Somehow after all these years.
So I think for you, Ahsoka is kind of like the extended editions of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because it's just all lore, and it's all a journey, and it's all getting to another place, right? And that's kind of what that show did. I'm hopeful that for the inevitable second season that it's going to get, that, they'll take some of the concepts and ideas and really execute on them. But I don't have a terrible ton of faith. Same thing with like Skeleton Crew or whatever, even though Skeleton Crew has a murderer's row of directors. It's got the guy who made the Spider-Man trilogy with Tom Holland. It's got the guys who made Everything Everywhere All at Once. The guy who made A Ghost Story and The Green Knight. Like, there's some heavy hitters that are making that show. But if it has a piss poor script,
plus
their talents are going to be wasted.
As we've seen in all of the Star Wars shows. Again, I have to exclude Andor for all of these because like the quality difference between Andor and any other Star Wars show.
We should just put an asterisk
yes,
on our channel
including
page.
Andor.
Doesn't include Andor anytime we talk about Star Wars.
It's just the one weirdo exception that like slipped through the cracks and nobody told it to be bad. But
takes, baby.
Directors largely don't matter. Like you can bring in the best talented directors, but it seems like no matter who you put on these shows, they end up being not great, and they don't look great, and they don't move well, and the script is not good, and the acting is not good. And so it almost doesn't even matter that like these great directors are working on it. I feel like it's just gonna be largely the same as every other Star Wars show, not Andor, has been.
I got a chuckle. So I think it was right after Skeleton Crew wrapped that one of the two Daniels, because they directed an episode, posted a thing on Instagram that was like, yeah, we did this. It was really great having healthcare for 2 months.
Yeah.
All right. We forget sometimes that, this is an industry. And especially in the TV world, there are a lot of hired guns that they come in, they do their one episode, they get paid, and they leave, right? Which seems to be particularly the case with the Skeleton Crew, and/or maybe not so much, because it looks like they invited a lot of folks back from season 1, especially on like the writing and production side of things. Because good Lord, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think Star Wars is in an interesting place because they have a ton of money. They have huge funding and backing from this massive corporate entity. They have good ideas in some cases, but they just seem a little bit lost. And I would really love it if they could find their way And like, could you just imagine if, if they came out with three different TV series a year and they were all Andor quality,
Yeah,
and your whole year was just killer Star Wars every single week?
yeah, and I think the asterisk we have to put on that is that we're not saying every show has to be the same tone or
No, not at all.
genre of what Andor is doing, but just that it has the same level of quality writing
Yep.
and performances, right? Like
Held
Star
to the
Wars,
same standard.
yeah, everyone likes to say that Andor is not Star Wars because it's not an action adventure, and I think that's fine, right? We're not saying everything has to be what Andor was trying to do, but I mean, there's a clear difference in quality between any of the like Mandoverse shows and Andor, just in terms of visuals, in terms of
Yeah.
writing, in terms of direction, all of that. They look like they were made by completely different companies, yet somehow they're still under Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right that Star Wars is kind of lost and it doesn't know what it needs to do, right? Like if you look at the upcoming slate of movies that they've announced, one of them is no, we're going to run it back with the sequel trilogy, right?
Yep.
With this Ray movie. And I think it's kind of weird that they hired a director who's never done a narrative feature before. Like she's only done documentary work, I think.
In film, yeah, I think she did one or two episodes of Miss
Yes,
Marvel or
yes,
whatever. But
correct,
aside from
correct.
that, Oscar-winning documentary
Correct.
filmmaker, which is
Yes.
amazing. It's fantastic.
Yes.
But
I just think
still
it's
a
a
little strange.
weird fit, but maybe it works. I don't know. I'm not going to judge it until I see it. But then you've got your Mando Grogu thing where you're extending that, right? So they're like, oh, well, it's almost like dipping your toes in every different bucket so that like one of them will work, right?
Yeah.
So like, oh, well, maybe the sequel spinoff will work. Well, if that doesn't work, maybe the Mando spinoff will work, and
Yeah.
we'll go full into Mando.
And if that doesn't work,
And
the
if that
Dawn
doesn't
of the
work,
Jedi will work.
we're gonna totally blow it all up, and James Mangold is gonna make this new era of Star Wars for us. It's
Right.
like, or pick a direction, right? Because all you're doing with this is you're almost splitting your fan base, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that like the sequels and a lot of people that hate the sequels.
Yep.
And a lot of the people that hate the sequels like the Mando show. And so like and love Dave Filoni and all that stuff. And so like, oh, we'll pivot this stuff into them. But the problem is like there's enough like everyone's gonna watch everything, right?
Yep.
And so you're just like battling each other, right?
Yep.
I personally think they should burn it all down and just like make something completely new that it's totally like unfamiliar, no characters, no connections, tell a new Star Wars story with new people and just like leave all this shit behind because there's no way you can make anything in this like stretch of time that's been covered by so much lore and legends and all this stuff without pissing somebody off. And clearly like the Acolyte is the ultimate example of this, right?
Which is hilarious because it's 100 years removed from everything.
Yeah. But you throw Kiadi Mundi in there and everyone loses their shit. So like you can't win.
Dickhead shows up and everything goes to hell.
Yeah, you can't win because somebody is going to have some emotional attachment to a trading card that they saw in 1999. And so like just burn it all down, do something else. Like, part of what works about Andor is that while it's setting up the A New Hope, Rogue One, like none of these characters except for Mon Mothma, who was in Return of the Jedi for like 5 minutes, is anyone that is connected to anyone we know, right? There's no real connection. It's like there's this little village of people who it's like the spark of the rebellion, right? Yep. And like that works because it's so far removed. But man, just like I think it was one of the screenwriters for Obi-Wan who was saying it's so difficult to write for that show because one line of dialogue in one movie or episode can derail your entire idea that you had. And like people are just boxed in and you're not going to get good creatives by boxing them in because they don't want to come in and deal with the shitstorm that comes if they, the Yord actor said he misspoke and said that Anakin blew up the Death Star and people lost their minds. It's like, come on.
Who cares?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the show at all. It's something that a guy said in an interview.
But yeah, I think they should take a new approach. I just I don't think Disney as a company will let them, right?
Well,
Because
because they have to diversify, right? And
well,
they have to
because
create revenue streams.
it's IP,
Yeah,
right? Like if you're throwing away all the movies that people grew up with and have that attachment to, then like what's the value of having the IP?
sure.
Which is why
Yeah,
they brought Luke and all them back, right? But then it's like, oh, we'll just kill them all. you know?
yeah. It's a real sticky situation, man. It's hard because uh, it's not like comic books where okay, cool, Peter Parker dies, Miles Morales can be Spider Man, or Tony Stark dies and Tony Stark from another universe can be Iron Man because
Yeah.
that's just how comics work. With Star Wars, you've got the one and only Luke Skywalker. You've got
Yep.
the one and only Han Solo, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
Or they come back for 30 seconds as like a weird ghost apparition thing in Rise of Skywalker. But we don't talk about that movie. It's just
Not a lot of people do.
right. But we could go on and on for hours about
We
this.
we could.
I think.
But yeah, I think we'll review the finale. Well, I mean, I'm gonna give it a fair shake.
Yeah,
Hopefully it's good. I always hope that this stuff is good. And then we'll talk about the finale. And I think it might be a good other episode to sort of assess all of the shows
Yeah,
so
for
far
sure.
and just
I would
talk
love
about
to
each
rank
of them.
individually because I feel like we'd have similar but also slightly different answers. Maybe
Not sure. Not
I
sure.
don't know,
We'll find out.
but we will find out. And if you want to find out, all you have to do is click on that subscribe button and tap on the little bell so that you get notified whenever that video comes out. We have had a very good time this week chatting about both House of the Dragon and the Acolyte. We're very excited to see where both the second half of that Game of Thrones season as well as this finale takes us. We'll be recording more videos about those in the not so distant future. And there's also a whole bunch of really exciting movies.
Oh, we've got movies coming up.
Twisters is coming out, and Glenn Powell is going to be here to save cinema yet again. Tom Cruise is out on the front lines with him with his popcorn bucket, and they're having a good old time. Deadpool and Wolverine is coming soon. There's 1,000,001 movies that Shane and I have both missed this summer that we're looking to catch up on. So no shortage of stuff for us to talk about here, and we'd love for you to join us on the ride. So until next time, we will see you guys in the next video.